Welcome. Tony Rusing here at Fuel for Freedom and Faith. And this little tip today is about freedom. How do you free yourself from the challenges that you have to face every single day? You have more opportunities than have ever been available on the planet. But the biggest mistake with all of those opportunities we make is spending too much time trying to decide which one we want to follow. I'll give you an example. There was a time when we went to the grocery store and we had a large and a small box of cereal. You go today and that box of cereal is no longer just large and small. It's large and small and family size and giant and share size and all the other sizes that complicate what we're trying to do. So if you want to do something for yourself today that's better than what you might have been doing, is recognize that with all of the choices you have today, you really need to limit what you decide to choose. And that, my friend, will help put fuel in your tank. Thanks for listening here at Tony at Fuel for Freedom. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Welcome, Tony Rusing here at Fuel for Faith and Freedom. Today's little tip is about the freedom we have when we become better listeners. And I've got a little tip for you that I think you're going to find very interesting. First of all, you won't read this in a book, but if you decide to do this, you will be astounded at what you hear. Have to tell you, you practice for 30 days before it starts to really stick. But here's how it works. 3 things that you can do that will make you a better listener. Number 1, see a movie more than once. How's that going to help? You'll be astounded at the things you missed the first time you watched that movie. Number 2, memorize something. When I was growing up, we memorized all sorts of things. And maybe you memorize the lyrics to a song. That's an example of taking the time to memorize something. And by doing that, you're going to improve your ability to listen. Here's the 3rd thing you want to be able to do to be a better listener. Read a story to a child. I don't know if you've had this privilege, but if you have, here's what happens. You get excited for them, and they get excited about hearing the story. So you get the storybook out, you start to read the storybook, you glance over, and they have closed their eyes. So you skip a couple of pages in the story, and they wake up. What happened to the bear? Well, we got to get back to that bear because they are listening to every single word. That's what will happen to you. If you practice these 3 things for 30 days, I promise you will be a better listener. That's how to put fuel in your tank for freedom. This is Tony at fuelforfreedom.com. Hope to hear from you. Thank you. This is Tony Rusing at Fuel for Freedom and Faith. One of the things that happens to us sometimes that we need more freedom with is being able to make a presentation. Let's suppose your boss comes to you and wants you to say something at the next annual meeting, and you do what many people do, get very anxious about what you're going to say. I'm going to give you a simple little formula you can use that will help you prepare for that, and you will be excited how much symmetry you will have in the message that you want to deliver. First of all, decide on what the problem is you want to fix. The second thing to do is offer a solution to the problem you've identified. The third thing you do is substantiate that problem fact, the solution that you've offered, with facts. You substantiate it with facts. And the fourth thing that must happen is you must ask or say or tell someone to do something. And it will make your message have a symmetry that will be useful and helpful to them. So pose the problem, offer a solution, substantiate with facts, and then ask for action. And the action needs to be segued. For an example, after you've done your talk, the way we've just described it, you would say, in closing, here's what I want to leave you with. Here's what I want you to do. I'm going to suggest that you do this. Try this at the next opportunity you have to, and you fill in the blanks. That's our tip for today, to put a little fuel in your tank. This is Tony at fuelforfreedom.com. Thanks for listening. Hi, this is Tony Rusing at Fuel for Faith and Freedom. Today's little tip is about faith, where it comes from and how to use or practice your faith. Each one of us has an opportunity to recognize we're not the most important person on the planet. We've been put here for a purpose, and when we find our purpose, our life has a lot more meaning. So how do you do that? How do you find your purpose? We have so many opportunities and so many choices out there today that we have to choose wisely. So if you're going to do something that's different than what you've been doing, you need to make a plan. And it's not a big, complicated thing to make a plan. It's simply saying, this is where I am, this is where I want to go. And the middle is, how do I get there? And that's where the planning takes place. Then you do it in a sequence that is useful and helpful to you. So we're talking about goal setting in many ways, but the truth is a goal is simply a dream with a date attached. So the planning process helps you determine how long this new opportunity is going to take. That's the tip. I hope it puts a little fuel in your tank today. And remember that when you're practicing your faith, you're practicing the faith you have inside yourself that comes from a higher power, not just from you. This is Tony at fuelforfaith.com. Hope to hear from you. Look forward to it. Thank you. Tony Rusing here at Fuel for Faith and Freedom. Today's tip is about freedom. You will have more freedom and more opportunity and more adventuresome parts of time in your life when you decide to manage your time more effectively. And you say, manage your time more effectively. How do you do that? Well, you have to recognize you have 168 hours a week. The best thing you can do is determine where that time is spent now. Because if you can't measure something, you can't manage it. And time needs to be managed. And that's all it can be, is managed. So you take 168 hours and you take the weekend away. That's 24. And you just continue to subtract by looking at all of the activities that you do in any given day. And by the end of it, you'll be surprised that there's nothing left. You put 8 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep or however much you need into that plan and into that inventory, and all of a sudden you'll discover that 168 hours is so precious, you need to know how it's being used now. That's the tip that hopefully puts fuel in your tank today. Look forward to hearing from you. Tony at fuelforfreedom.com is how to reach me. Thanks again for listening. This is Tony Rusing at Fuel for Faith and Freedom, and I've got a little freedom tip for you today. Most of us are challenged by the fact that we like to control things. And truth is, there's very little we can control. But what we can do is manage things and manage them well. So I'm going to ask you to write something down. Grab a piece of paper and write this down. My job is to manage the moment. Think about that for just a moment. My job is to manage the moment. You get past trying to control things and other people, and you begin to recognize that we have to accept people as they are, not as we wish they were. And that's one way of recognizing that you're only managing rather than controlling. Now, let's go back to what you wrote down. My job is to manage the moment. Scratch out job and put joy in its place. My joy is to manage the moment. When you do that and stretch it into a series of moments, you will discover that you are feeling better about yourself, and guess what happens? You start feeling better about others as well. That's your tip, putting fuel in your tank today. Hope that works for you. You can reach me at Tony@fuelforfreedom.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Tony Rusing here from Fuel for Freedom and Faith. Today's tip is about the freedom you will have if you take this little piece of fuel and put it in your tank and use it the next time you're put on the spot. This is what happens. You're in a meeting. 15, 20 people in that meeting, 2 or 3, doesn't make any difference the size. What does happen is, unexpectedly, you're asked to say something. And in that moment, you get anxious or nervous. And you do because you weren't expected to be called upon. But there's a simple little formula that you can use that will make this seamless for you, and everyone else will be able to recognize that you know what you're talking about. When someone says, give us an update on a project that you might be involved in, you simply start by saying about that project past, something in the past. Then you segue to the present, and then you move to the future. So it might sound something like this. Last week, if you recall, we started the new project on how we're going to develop this software that you've just ordered. And I'm happy to report that as of this morning, that software arrived, and we're getting ready to begin the installation of it so that we can do some test driving of it. And if it goes as well as we believe it will in the future, that's going to be a real core piece of the material and the software we use to really advance our customer service project. That's how you do it. Past, present, future. Something from the past, something in the present, and then moving to the future. That simple little formula can be a real useful tool for you in a meeting. Hope that puts some fuel in your tank. This is Tony at fuelforfreedom.com. Look forward to hearing from you, and thanks for listening to today's Fuel Tip.